Hello and welcome to the Alt-ernative podcast. We've got Graham back with us today from Graham America. I'll leave all of his details in the description below, as I do with all guests. Hiya Graham, thanks for coming back on the show.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you guys again.
So we'll jump straight in. We want to start at the very beginning. So when we last spoke, there was a lot of different theories, thoughts, and I guess knowledge that you had, which me and Aaron discussed for a long time after we had our conversation. So yeah, let's just delve right in. We want to start at the beginning. So what is your theory or understanding of how humanity started? Like where did we come from? What's going on there?
Yeah, I don't know how much knowledge I have. I mean, we have researchers on the show and stuff, and I'm sort of more of a host, but I mean, I can speculate a little bit. I mean, I just don't think it's what we're sort of taught. I don't think I struggle between sort of the theosophical look of view of it, which is more about like these there's different races, like there's a spiritual race and another sort of animal race, and then we come to sort of more intelligent man. It seems like there's these cycles of races, not races, species almost, like it's the way sort of life evolves. And then we'll get to a point where like we were sort of, I think their theory is we were sort of one sex before, and then we became two sexes, and then we're moving into like I think it's the fifth cycle. I don't know about that compared to more of like an ET sort of interventional DNA modification type thing. Like we have Bruce Fenton. I don't know if you guys know him. He's from the UK. I think he's from the UK. He talks about this event that happened 800,000 years ago. That was happens to correspond with the tektite fields in different parts of the world, Moldavite and these tektites that fell. And he thinks there was some sort of ET ship explosion over Earth, like almost like a war. That's sort of corresponds to us being modified as well. And it seems like there's some mainstream science that kind of backs up that our history keeps going back further and further and further. Now it's like officially it's 3 or 400,000 years. Before it was 100,000, and it was 200. Now it's 3 or 400, and it seems to be getting closer to what some alternative researchers like Bruce Fenton say was really like a real turning point in humanity, where we kind of got modified to become the modern human that we are, I guess. But it's interesting that even the mainstream scientists believe that there was 9 types of what's the word, hominid. I don't know. It's there's 9, like there's Homo florensis, like the hobbits basically is an accepted sort of species, not us, not exactly us, but something different. So now there's 9 different types: the Denisovans and the Neanderthals and the Cro-Magnon, and so I think I think it's more of a hybridization type thing. Like we had this other guy on called what was his name now? And he was a he was a big hybrid guy. He believed in hybrid. Like I think he thinks that we come from like pigs and chimps. We're hybrids of pigs and chimps. That's getting pretty out there, but he thinks that it's not really evolution like they say it is. It's more hybridization.
Yeah, I've never heard the theory that we've come from pigs before. That's a
But did you say our organs are very similar to pigs' organs, right?
Yeah, there's some real weird, creepy similarities. Yeah.
right, because that guy got the transplant, right? The heart transplant
Heart
from a pig.
transplant, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, really? Yeah. Interesting. The
I think
other
he died
aspect
though.
is it.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
it
it.
only survived like 6 months.
Wow. I think it takes us a long time to process pork as well, which kind of is another sort of interesting thing. Like the hardest thing we have to digest, I think, is pork.
And then it kind of, when you look at some religions, I think Judaism and Islam, they both don't eat pork.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting. So I guess I don't know like where we began and all that, but I just don't think it's what we say. I think it's open for interpretation. I think I'm starting to think that all this ET disclosure that's happening, is almost more about, and why why the history's been suppressed about giants and about ancient advanced civilizations, whether it's, you know, Egypt or Central America or South America, like all that stuff is, they kind of don't want us looking into all that. I mean, you can tell by how Graham Hancock was attacked when he came out with his last Netflix series, right? He's called a white supremacist and all this stuff. And again, and even just mentioning theosophy, they'll turn that into some race thing, but which it wasn't, you know. But I think that what's happening is the government's, this is my sort of pet theory now that I'm sort of coming up with, and I guess I've heard it before, maybe in the early 90s, but the government's had some sort of intervention. I mean, they were practicing with like occultism back then before the CIA was created. Like I'm going to recommend a podcast here from the Brothers of the Serpent and Marty Garza, who's a friend of mine. But he really puts this stuff about UFOs and the occult and the secret government programs together kind of in a really interesting way, because they were playing around with this stuff back in the 30s, and the Nazis were playing around with it too. I mean, there's a spiritual connection with what the governments have been learning over the last 150 years. So my sense is that they played around and they realized it was real. They're like, holy shit, it's real. Then the modern sort of UFO thing happens. And I mean, there's some really interesting parts about what people like Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard were doing, summoning the Whore of Babylon in the desert and stuff like that. And they were part of this modern rocketry club. So what I think happens is that the government started finding out the reality is just way crazier than they thought. Like my pet theory is that they realized, like, there's all these ETs, there's all this demons and angels, there's the occult and the spiritual influences plus ETs, and it's so much more. We're almost more like, I think they realized that we are more like an experiment or being monitored constantly, you know, over thousands of years, and that they can't let us figure this stuff out. And then the campaign of fear and the media and all this stuff, like the CIA basically said, we'll know our job is completed when everything the American public believes is false, or that quote, whatever that quote was, that is I probably got some of it wrong, but it basically means that they want to just hide everything from us, right? So I don't think that humanity was ready back then for the way reality is structured. And I think it kind of leaks out as we come along, and now this disclosure thing is bringing it to light. Like how is the phenomena itself going to respond to accelerated disclosure? Like people, because I believe that we have power in our minds, and our thoughts are things. We are powerful beings, and they don't want us to think that. They want us to be like, we're just like worker slaves. They don't want us to think we have any autonomy over our reality. So how does the phenomena react? If that's true, and the phenomena is based on some kind of consciousness, how does it react to more people believing? Because whatever's happening with this disclosure, more people, I have friends that were never into this stuff. They're like, hey, UFOs are real. Like, things are like, there's almost like a deeper reality here that people are believing in. So how's the phenomena going to react to more people believing in it? You know? So that's sort of, I'm going all over the place, but that podcast you got to listen to. There's 3 parts of it. And Marty Garza's kind of written an essay type thing, and Russ from Brothers of the Serpent reads it out, and they discuss it. And he gets into the occult stuff that the government was doing, the early UFO stuff. I mean, he sort of puts it all together, but not in a real opinionated way. He just throws out all the stuff that's happened in a timeline. And it's really mind-boggling. It's called the spookiest story, and spooky as in CIA spook, I believe. The spookiest story never told on the Brothers of the Serpent podcast. And it's really got me thinking. Because I just narrated this book also about early 1950s. So it's called The Saucers Are Real by Donald Kehoe. And Kehoe was on NICAP, one of the first UFO organizations that came about in 1952 or 53, I think. And the amount of evidence that they had back then, not even including Roswell. Like Roswell was like I think it was in Donald Keogh's book. It was just like a different case. It wasn't called Roswell. They called it something by the border, like it was a desert crash by the border. There was a couple of times they mentioned, I thought that's Roswell that they're pointing to, but there was so much evidence of flying saucers, and Kehoe went over it all. And I don't think this is disinformation. It seemed legit that he was like trying to explain it away by all these other things. And it just, there was no other explanation except for non-human intelligence back then, you know. And of course, other researchers came around later on and said, well, it's more about consciousness and interdimensional stuff. It's not just ETs from other planets, but it just shows that we're living in sort of a greater reality. And it's been going on a lot longer than we thought.
When was the first known sighting of a UFO?
Well, it goes back thousands of years. That's the thing, right? It's like now they're looking at all these religious texts and they're reinterpreting ancient scriptures. And I mean, the Vimanas were in the Vedas. They go back to now. All the, you know, people are seeing like, hey, that wasn't about maybe an angel. It was about a UFO back in the. So I think it's like thousands of years old. So I think we've been interacting with these other non-human intelligences for so long, and now I think it's finally. I think what happened is in the late 1800s, this was growing, like spiritualism, and at least in America and maybe some of the West. I mean, because a lot of other cultures already believe all this stuff, right? I mean, India and even probably China and Indonesia, like a lot of other cultures are just that they know there's a greater spiritual reality, or they believe that all along. But it's the West that's kind of been through the Enlightenment, and they've tried to ignore that spiritual reality. So in the late 1800s, spiritualism and theosophy was huge. There was politicians involved in the stuff. There was seances all over. There was people making contact with all kinds of stuff. There was a real sort of push against materialism and the science that happened, the scientism that was happening. And of course, against dogmatic religion like the Catholic Church. But that all got squashed. I think that was really gaining steam, and it all got squashed, I think, in the early 1900s when they got rid of ether, when they came up with quantum mechanics and Einstein stuff, and then World War I really kind of redrew the maps and kind of reset the world and became more materialistic. So, but now we're coming out of that again. I think we're coming out of that, and people are realizing that there's more to reality. But just to tie back to the whole start of humanity is, and I think that's why there's the humanity, even the start of it is more spiritual than we think. Well, we weren't just evolved from sludge into humans and like eventually from apes to humans. I think there's more of a spiritual reality. We've gained sort of consciousness along the way somewhere through intervention, probably.
Well, it's funny that you say, well, when you look at the theory of there's been 9 different species of human, do you think, or I mean, you can't say yes or no, I understand that, but it's possible that we are an experiment and they keep getting the experiment wrong, so they keep, I don't know, adding a little bit more powder into the pot and trying to sort of perfect what they are trying to make.
Yeah, or they got it right. I mean, look at what we built like 20,000, 30,000 years ago. I mean, look at the ancients. I mean, look at Egypt and look at the some of the stuff like the Serapeum. I mean, there's some marvels that are unbelievable that we and what did they say we did at 6? Like, what's the mainstream explanation for some of these things? 5,000-6,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago. But when you look deeper into it, it seems like it's way longer ago. So at some point in our past, let's just assume that that's true, like that the people that advocate for advanced ancient civilization are right, that there's something pre-Younger Dryas flood, so back 15, 20,000, 30,000 years ago, there was advanced humans with some sort of technology making these megalithic structures, for example, and tunneling all over. There's tunnels all over the place that were made long time ago.
Well, there's those ones in Turkey, isn't there? I think they're maybe 20 to 30,000 years old.
Yeah. So, and some people say those are connected to Scotland. And I mean, what were they hiding from back then? You know, I mean, don't forget there was all the megalithic monsters. I mean, that's another mainstream thing that was, or I shouldn't say monsters, I mean animals. But I mean, if you look at some of the megalithic creatures that were around back then, you know, the saber-toothed tigers and the short-nosed bear was massive, like 12 feet high, like massive. And they were all wiped out during the cataclysm. I mean, dire beavers, dire wolves. I mean, massive. What was the other one that there's massive armadillo like thing? I mean, like fucking crazy creatures. Like you meet a short nosed bear, it puts a grizzly to shame. I mean, these things are twice the size of a grizzly.
Yeah. So, what's your opinion around dinosaurs?
I don't know. I I hear all these people. Have you heard about the conspiracies about dinosaurs at all?
I've heard a few recently, yeah, which are leading me to
Yeah,
question
did they say
everything.
they don't exist or whatever? Or-
Yeah, and there's
yeah,
there's loads of them. I think one of the conspiracies that I was listening to was saying dinosaur the bones of dinosaurs aren't actually from the reptiles; they're actually from giants, but they've just reconstructed them to make us believe that they are from the reptiles.
yeah, I heard that one too. I don't get it. I don't really yeah, I don't really fall for the dinosaur thing is hard for me to wrap my head around. You know how they could do why they would want to just hide the dinosaur stuff from this, or I don't know. It just seems weird.
Yeah, but it falls into the bigger conspiracy of when you look at like children's toys or children's clothing, it's all either space, dinosaurs, and these are the sort of things which have the biggest conspiracies around them now, and it's all the stuff that sort of stuffed down the throats of kids from a really young age, and they're saying that it could be seen as just constant manipulation to force children to believe all this stuff is true. Whereas when you're at a certain level and you just start questioning everything, you just see the red flag straight away.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never thought about it like that. Yeah.
'Cause, yeah, they're like the two main sort of components. What's What's your thoughts around? Because obviously you've mentioned there that the West went super like anti-spiritual. The tide is turning there because more and more people are sick of the routine crap, and they understand that there's more to life than just working in a box and just I don't know, watching crap on TV. But then when you look at ancient Hinduism and even Hinduism today, it's still got a lot of spirituality, which has sort of kept it alive around that sort of area of the world. How important of a role do you think Hinduism has played in ancient civilization?
Oh, I think massive. I think they're the ones that are closest to the truth, I think, in a lot of ways. You know, the ancient texts, like you talking about the Vedas and stuff, like some of the
Yeah,
really
yeah,
ancient texts going back. Yeah, I mean, I think they might have even been sort of further back than we think. You know, pre Egyptian type stuff, or at least as far back as that. Yeah, I think that's I think that's fascinating. I mean, I think they were on to a science back then that we're coming to realize is real now. Like, I don't know if you guys did we talk about it last time, or have you guys heard about this Malcolm Bendall technology that's based on some of the Vedic kind of ancient cultural
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah.
it's
You pulled
it's,
up the diagram.
it's blowing
Yeah,
up
so
at the moment.
yeah, since
Um,
we've talked, they've done testing and stuff, and it
yeah,
seems to be working, right? So
Yeah, well, Randall's been on a few different podcasts. I know he's been
yeah,
on Concrete, which I
yeah,
watched.
right.
He's been on it twice, right? He came on it again yesterday. I've not watched the one
was he
yesterday.
on
Is
it again
is
yesterday?
Yeah.
Oh, really? It's Concrete what's his name again? Is it
Uh,
Jason something, or no,
not
Danny something
Danny.
maybe?
Danny.
So is that the same podcast? Because I watched one with Randall to prepare for something else, and it was with Danny Jones, maybe Danny Jones.
Yeah, Danny Jones.
So
That's the
is
Concrete
that
host.
Concrete? Is that the same thing?
Yeah. He's a host of
Oh, okay.
Concrete.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
his
okay. I
yeah,
wasn't, because I just saw it as Danny Jones, and I thought Concrete was another one. Okay.
yeah, because he was on
But
it
yeah.
2 weeks ago, and then
Okay.
Ben Van Kerwick, I can't pronounce
Yeah.
his came
Ben
back
Van.
on, and then them two did a joint one. Today it got released today. They did
Oh
a
wow,
joint.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I saw somebody link that. Yeah. So I mean that's what we're talking about. I don't know if Randall gets into that this time or they talk more about the ancient stuff that, but it sure is fascinating. So it's fascinating that it works, and it's fascinating that the guy who invented this, and one of the other guys, that's his name is uh okay, it'll come to me. But the gist of it is, and this is me kind of getting all crazy and speculating and stuff, but they've had spiritual experiences, right? Like both of them have had these weird spiritual experiences, and they've been connected to a greater source. They're getting their information from, let's say, the field or the source or the ether, whatever it is. They're connected to it. It's not like they're working it all out in a traditional scientific way. I think that's why it's hard for people to not accept, right? It's like they can build something that works, but they don't necessarily know why from a Newtonian or an Einsteinian way how it works.
Yeah, it's because our educational system is so restricted that everyone's sort of taught this linear path of education, and then you come out of it into the real world, and if you even doubt anything that you've learned and you even go off track for a second, everyone just labels you as a crazy person.
Exactly. Bob Greenier is the other guy. And Bob Greenier had and I almost trust these guys more because they've had these spiritual experiences, because they're opening up and talking about them. It's funny, but I trust that information more than coming from a materialist scientist who says that dark matter exists, or the black holes, or the age of the universe, which has already doubled again. I mean, all these scientific realities that end up being wrong in the end anyways. Because how do you ever account for everything? It's you just can't. It's like these models of climate change or these other models. You can never account for all the information.
Yeah, because if you look at I think we did talk about pyramids last time you was on, but if you look at that sort of them buildings and just the way of life from any of these ancient civilizations, you can't imagine that they'll be going and living off the same system, or even a system anywhere close to the system we're working off right now. We've taken a turn somewhere, and we've progressed down the route. I don't know if I mentioned it last time, or it might have been on a different podcast, but in the science community, or the science industry, it's all built really backwards. So whatever theory like Einstein had, that's like the found, or them sort of past scientists had, that's like the foundation level of science. And from that point on, people have only built up from there rather than taking any other paths. Because, yeah, I mean, the science industry is crazy, because if anyone at all does divulge from the foundations that have already been set by them scientists, they are just labeled like conspiracy theorists. Look at Graham Hancock. I know he's not a scientist, but I mean, he's doing better work than a scientist.
Yeah, straight away, like last time we spoke about what Malcolm Bendel and Randall Carlson are doing, we put a clip on our YouTube channel, and we've had comments, people saying, "Oh, we hate pseudoscience," and it's just like they label it straight away as pseudoscience. So when people see the video, they'll just write off the video completely. But science should be there for things to be proven wrong and things to be proven right. People should be arguing about whether it's right or wrong and trying to prove theories that prove that it's right or prove that it's wrong. Not, oh, it's pseudoscience, I'm not going to deal with it because we're too arrogant to deal with it.
Yeah, if you have evidence of something and it doesn't fit into the mold, then it doesn't mean that the evidence is wrong. It means the mold is wrong. I mean, it's Charles Fort was also dealing with this from Charles Fort. We've got some audiobooks from him too, but from an astronomical, he was really pushing back against astronomy as well, because they would ignore stuff because it doesn't fit into their current model, right? Instead of changing the model, they would just ignore all the evidence. Oh, that doesn't exist because our model says it shouldn't exist. Well, it's like what you're saying. That's backward science, right? It's like just because Einstein, it doesn't fit into the Einsteinian model doesn't mean it's not real. It just means you got to relook at the model. I mean, yeah, but it's out there. It's making headway, and it'll show these people that claim it's pseudoscience. I mean, even Randall's last newsletter, he was just like, yeah, for all these idiots that are trying to debunk it, like look at what's really happening instead of just claiming that it's not going to work.
Because there's people have made this invention in their back gardens using the techniques that Malcolm Bendel's come up with. But modern science can't explain how it works.
Yeah, exactly. Because then they'd have to admit that alchemy is real.
Yeah, which will just
I mean, really,
because it will discredit so much of their current work. That's what.
oh yeah, I mean, it's so past, like it's so far beyond them, right? They'd have to admit that modern alchemy is real, like they're transmuting molecules. I mean, that's just way past like what they want to even consider.
Do you think this technology is going to come into the mainstream, or do you think it will
Yeah,
be
it's going to have
suppressed?
to. I mean, well, I don't know if it's the mainstream, but it'll be used. It's already going to start being used, so it'll be there. But I don't know. I can't really picture how it'll be accepted or not. I mean, I think they might still try and take it down. They'll say it's dangerous or something. I mean, I'm sure there'll be pushback, but I just don't know if. I think the cat might be out of the bag now. They might not be able to put it back in. So enough people have the plans. Enough people are working on it. It's already shown through a number of tests that is working. So it might already be too far out there.
I can already see the headlines of ancient technology contributes to climate change.
Yeah, exactly. And they'll just totally do an opposite thing, right? They'll ignore the evidence and say it's contributing to climate change instead of the opposite. Even though it's getting rid of all the bad gases, the supposedly bad gases, right?
So this technology works on sacred geometry.
Yeah, well, that's what it's
Can you
based on.
explain what sacred geometry is?
Well, probably not. I mean, that's kind of up to Randall and those guys to explain it. But I mean, I guess what I would say is that it's all connected. Like it's the foundation of everything, right? The numbers, the geometry. And when you look back to the ancient wisdom, like the ancient like Pythagoras and even Hermes Trismegistus and all, they would say that geometry is the number one science. Like everything else is based around that. So they knew it was the foundation of everything, this geometry. But when they call it sacred geometry, I don't really know how to explain this, except that it connects everything together, kind of, right? Like they can see that the distance from the sun and the distance from the moon and the sizes and the whether it's the shape of the pyramid, all this stuff is kind of connected through this sort of this geometry.
And this is what they used to build the pyramids because the pyramids like exactly is it below or lines up exactly with the stars? Is it North Star?
Yeah, or Orion, they say it lines up with Orion, but it also what's the right word to use? Correlates or corresponds to the size of the Earth. Like it's you can calculate the pyramid based on the size of the Earth, and it's got a whole bunch of other strange things. So it's just hard, you just can't say that that's all coincidence or a chance. That all these numbers line up like that. But Randall's got a great sacred geometry course, and it really is mind blowing when you get into it. It really is. It really is mind blowing. So the principles that Malcolm used, because he's followed Randall's work too, and he are based on this. There's certain, just like the cathedrals and some of the ancient structures that were built were based on some of these geometries. So, yeah,
What do you believe? How do I structure this question? Why do you believe it's declined? So why have we declined? Why is this knowledge now gone? Sort of. Why do
which knowledge? Like the ancient, let's say the ancient Hindu knowledge, like the Vedics and stuff, or
Yeah, I mean, even with the geometry as well. Like, why are we not using the knowledge that the ancient civilizations use?
yeah, that's the big question. I mean, that also, I think the same answer to that is the answer for why the world is still at war right now. Like I feel like it's the same. Now, whether that's a darker spiritual force, which a lot of our guests have said, like, and these are people I trust that have looked into this for decades and decades, and they think there is something more to it than just materialism, sort of going down the technological path that automatically will ignore that kind of ancient wisdom. I think it could be more of like like an archonic force or something that's sort of leading us down that road. I don't know though. I just it's the more I sort of read and learn about the stuff, the less I know. Honestly, like
Yeah, that is so true.
It's
You
very
go open one door and there's about 70 more
yeah.
doors in front of you.
Because it's hard to know if it was just intentional or like just not intentional, but you start doing the scientific method and you need to see the results and you get stuck in that paradigm of like, I need to be able to measure this result. And then does that just happen sort of automatically? Like, is that part of our natural development that we go down that path and forget about the spiritual stuff, or is it more done on purpose? And I think I tend to think it was done on purpose. I just don't know who's responsible, because even the Catholic Church and the religions would ignore a lot of that stuff too, right? I mean,
Yeah. But then, yeah, when you just look at life around you, I mean, Hollywood's the prime example, right? You can just see so much sort of dark forces within Hollywood, um, and it kind of like puts it into perspective that there is something at play. Because me and Aaron went down the rabbit holes of going down there, and then sooner or later you just like, shit, I need to get out of this. It's not a nice place to be down here. But when you actually look at it with a bit more of a fresh lens, I guess, with a fresh head, then you can actually see it's quite plain and obvious that there are dark forces at play.
yeah, it really makes you wonder how overt the satanic symbolism is, just for example, in Hollywood and all that. I mean, it really, you're like, well, why are you doing all that then? Why are you making your music videos look like hell? I mean, it's right there in front of us. So they are kind of, yeah, it doesn't help that they're using all this real kind of nasty symbolism.
And it is everywhere at the moment in pop culture. You can just turn any movie, or if you put the music channel on, you're 100% guaranteed to see some kind of evil.
Yeah, some Baphomet symbolism, but I also don't know, like, I also don't really prescribe to like these things being inherently evil as well. Like, I still don't know where I land on that, because it's all how you use the stuff. Like, Lucifer was looked at so differently in the early 1900s and the late 1800s than it is now, I think. I mean, they I don't think they were, for example, I think Blavatsky's newsletter was called Lucifer or something, right? Like, she named it Lucifer, and then Lucis Trust got made by, I think it was Alice Bailey, when she split off from Theosophy. So now Theosophy gets painted with this whole bad brush about being Luciferian. But their definitions of that wasn't just evil, right? They had a different perspective of evil and good.
Mm. Yeah, it's like Brandon when he came on our podcast. I don't know if you know Brandon Thomas from Expanding
Yeah.
Reality. You've been
Yeah.
on there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When me and Aaron were talking with him, he stopped us and was like, "Well, what is good and evil? Like that's just something we've made up. It's actually doesn't exist." So when you're looking at these people in Hollywood and saying, "Oh, they're evil," are they, or are they just using the wisdom, the sort of alchemy? Are they using the forces that are out there, and we're just seeing it as evil because that's the label we've put on it? But are they just using what everyone else would use?
Yeah. Because they would call a lot of stuff black magic, even the occultists, because occultists never used to mean dark, evil. It used to just mean hidden, right? So the occultists, sort of the deeper sort of spiritual mystics and the spiritualists that would look into all this stuff and practice all this stuff. But it wasn't dark back then. But where was I going with that? With what did you mention before that? Oh, Malcolm's. So they would, the darkness and the evil. So they would think that even like new thought would be black magic, like manifesting stuff would be black magic in a way. So, but now those occultists are looked at as dark, when they were like, be careful what you do. Like, Blavatsky would warn everybody, don't even do yoga and meditation and all these like spiritual practices until you're initiated. Like, you need to know what you're doing before you go into any of this stuff, because they knew sort of how dangerous it was. And yet all that's been flipped on its head. And now they call the occultists evil and dark. And then everybody's practicing all this other chaos magic and new age stuff and Wicca and which is fine, but it makes me wonder about good and evil. Like Malcolm, and then I flip flop between sort of that sort of nuanced view of it to what Malcolm Bendall says is good and evil, which I really like. It's like, are you empowered or disempowered? If you're disempowering people, you're evil. If you're empowering people, you're good. Like, that's his real basic definition, which is kind of where I was going with it too. Like, You know, if you're trying to force me to do something, that could be considered evil, right?
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
like
maybe
manipulating you or
that's kind
causing
of,
harm to you.
yeah, exactly. Maybe that's the way the definition needs to go. Because using, like, calling symbolism evil is not helping, I don't think, or calling a whole group of people evil is not helping. Like, it depends on their intention. It depends on whether they're empowering you or not. You know, if somebody practices Wicca but they're helping or they're not disempowering you, like, why is that evil?
Yeah, I guess that brings us. Well, it kind of relates to what Christianity teaches with the Bible. I know it's been interpreted in a certain way, but when you sort of go back to the root of the Bible, it is literally just do good to others.
Yeah, yeah. And yet they'll burn witches at the stake, right? I mean, that's the, and the Inquisition. I mean, they and the residential schools. I mean, that's the problem, is that the churches themselves got so far away from the actual message. You know? I mean, they were hunting down the real Christians, the ones that would just worship Christ without the church. I mean, that was one of the worst heresies.
Yeah, it brings us to what you were saying earlier about is it just human nature to go down this route of, I guess it's greed in a sense, because the churches have turned to greed to get funds. Because you see some of the churches that are out there now and they're beautiful buildings. But I've seen that there's a modern one that's been put up close by to where I am, and you wouldn't know it's a church. It looks like a beautiful modern building. You wouldn't look at it and think anything to do with God or Christianity. You just look at it and think of money. That's a very rich business, but then it turns out it's a church.
So I don't know if that's intentional or part of our regular, let's say, evolution or our societal evolution or whatever. I feel like it's influenced. You know, I think I lean towards some sort of darker influence.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do say we're in a spiritual war at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I think we are 100%. Yeah.
Um, who do you believe Jesus Christ was? Because obviously, well, you could, but do you believe he was a man that could walk on water, or do you believe he was something else?
You know what? I think I lean right now towards him being more of like an Essene healer, like a coming from I recorded this book called The Mystical Life of Jesus, I think it was called The Mystical Life of Jesus, and it talks about him being an Essene from basically like a secret society of healers back then. So he's more of like a mystic or like a Rosicrucian sort of mystic than a savior. I kind of lean towards that. I think he was real, but he was more of a spiritual mystic than anything. But I don't know. So it's another one of those things that, like, you almost need full time to even go to even learn about some of these things. You know, you need to write a book or need to go down so much research to even, like, I really find like I just skim the surface of so many different things. You know, maybe I can kind of put some things together from all the stuff I've researched, but I can't really go too deep on anything because then I don't have time to do the show. You know, it's a very strange thing because I like to do a little bit of the show, but we're always talking to such a wide variety of guests and that's fascinating because I'm interested in all these different things. But man, to go down any of these, like, I still don't really know about the early parts of Christianity or or even the church and how that all split up. I mean, learning a little bit at a time here and there, but I can't really, or even like your first question about humanity. Like, I mean, I've just scratched the surface on all these different things, which might be okay, but it doesn't give me like in-depth knowledge, you know?
Mm. Yeah, because I found that when you're doing things like what we're all doing on this podcast is just talking to people and learning more about the world. What you'll find is a lot of theories counter other theories. So you can't go down one and just keep traveling down. You'll go down one and it'll counter to another and flip you to another and flip you to another. And before you know it, you know a load of nothing really because
Yeah, exactly.
not
And
me.
I try not to be dogmatic about much at all. Like, I really don't know. I mean, just I have these thoughts, and kind of a knowledge from people's theories, but I really try not to hold any sort of dogmatic ideas, you know. Some overarching ones though, for sure, like the spiritual reality or like life after death or UFOs, like that, you know, there's like overarching ideals I have, but you know, not any real dogmatic when it gets to the details of how things are.
Yeah, I get it though, because how can you? Yeah, I don't feel like anyone can have, unless you know, you can't really, you don't know, right? Because you can only fantasize over what could be. And I guess what I like is the theories that are out there, but not too far from home. So you can sort of imagine them, but they are quite out there and a bit wacky and wild.
Yeah, exactly. Like I saw this UFO in Israel 33 years ago, Tel Aviv. Did I tell you guys about it last time? So I was with a group of people. So it was a multi-person sighting. They saw it twice. I saw it once. So I went up to we were staying in a rooftop hostel in Tel Aviv. I was traveling around the Middle East and Europe and stuff as a kid. Well, I was 20 years old. So I came up to the top and they were all pointing up to the sky and they're yelling and screaming like, "Oh, what's that thing up there in the sky?" And I run over to them and I'm like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And they're like, "We just saw this UFO and it went like this and it did this turn." And I'm like, "What?" And I was so pissed off that I missed it. Right. So I'm looking up and I'm like, "Please come back. Please come back. I want to see you too. I want to see you too." And then I spotted something and I'm like, "Is that it?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's the same thing." And it was about a half moon or a 3/4 moon. And this was shining. So there was no lights on it. It was just shining. It was an object flying silently through the sky and it was reflecting the moonlight. And it was like have them out here. I haven't, it was like an icosahedron or a dodecahedron, like it, but it was split in half and the halves were rotating against themselves like that. And the whole thing was also rotating on an axis in a way. Like, and it was, so it was like a 20-sided dice or a 12-sided dice, or it just was a polygonal shape split in half rotating like this. It almost gave you the sense of a satellite, but it was like at about a silver dollar or a loonie at arm's length big, and it was silent and it was flying definitely in airspace. And they all saw it again, and it just went, it kept going slowly until it disappeared. And the only other time I've seen that shape, like I got into UFOs after coming back from that trip in the early 90s and the mid 90s. And I saw a sightings TV show program with this lady from Israel who saw the same thing. And that was the only, I mean, even up till now, there's very little sightings of that shape of a thing, right? So except for this other lady in Israel. So that's interesting. I mean, I didn't even maybe I did back then, but I don't remember if that was the same time as the one when I saw it or not. I wish I would remember that. So what is that, right? I don't know what it is. I don't have any real idea. Is it like ET? Is it some black project craft that's developed by some Israeli company? Is it some religious thing? Like, who knows? It's sacred. It's also very like sacred geometry in a way. Like dodecahedron is one of the most powerful shapes. They say it's the shape of the world, that the world's made of. So when you go into ancient wisdom on dodecahedron, it's like the most powerful prevalent shape. All right, so I mean, so all these different things, but I don't know what it is. But what do you think after you see something like that, right? I mean, reality is just like completely different, and yet a couple years into the podcast, I tracked down the Kiwi girls, the New Zealand girls that were with us, and they just chalked it up to a couple beer. Like they didn't even change their life. They didn't even really affect them at all. Yet me and the English guy that I was with named David, which I'd love to try. I tried to track him down. I can't find him anywhere because he's got the most common name in the world. David Miller, I think. Like I couldn't find him anywhere. I tried to track him down, but him and I both had a very profound experience. And, you know, we were working on a kibbutz together and we talked to we told the guy that was running the kibbutz and he's just laughing at us like no such thing as those. And he's this like super religious guy. I don't even know what religion. I mean, and, so ridiculed from the religious people, ridiculed from the scientific people. Oh, what was it? A mass hallucination? Like whatever the answer is, it doesn't even matter because it's so strange to whatever the answer is. Like even if it was like a traditional, like, oh, it's a new satellite being flown up, or like even like whatever the most mundane explanation is still super crazy. It still blows away our reality.
What I find fascinating is people like yourself who have had these experiences in the 90s. That's what you're talking like over 30 years ago now. And okay, that's 30 years. But what you've had that many years of believing in this, and then suddenly 2023, 2022 comes, and they're like, boom, the UFOs are real. Like, I've not, obviously, I can't say I've had that experience because I wasn't really here for much of the 90s anyway, but it must be a weird experience to be like, because you would have gone through times doubting yourself, thinking, wait, am I actually crazy or not? And then suddenly, a switch flicks, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, they're real." All these people that we've labelled as crazy over the last 20 years, they've actually, they might have had a point.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I went through like a lot of the research in the 90s. And I mean, I did lose it for a time when I got, I was drinking too much. I was in a corporate job. I was traveling around all the time. I lost my grip on like what I was truly interested in. So I went down the UFO rabbit hole for a while, and then I got sober in 2008, and then I kind of went back into all this stuff, and
What was it
read
that
about
triggered you to come back?
what triggered me. Uh, uh, being getting sober, or the actual interest in UFOs and stuff.
Yeah, just I mean, yeah, the from going into corporate way of living, and then sort of flicking out of it into UFOs and I guess
Yeah,
the
I,
truth
I just
community.
I just well, I had a pretty weird synchronicity actually with it. I'll tell it if you don't mind. So I took this UFO course in it was a college course on UFOs in British Columbia in 1994, 95, 96, somewhere. Yeah, somewhere in there, right? I took this course. So after I got sober, I was kind of getting interested in the UFO subject again, and I think it had to do with sobriety as well. Like, I mean, I was trying to find myself again. I was trying to be honest and truthful, and I was in recovery. I was like no more of this bullshit and lying to myself and others. So I was cleaning up my life spiritually, I guess you could say. So of course this stuff would sort of interest me. And I was thinking back, I might have even found my binder. I can't remember if I found my binder from the course. So, and I started thinking about the teacher, and I remember the teacher who it was, and the teacher of this course, because this would have been like 14 years after. It seems like that was closer together than I remember, but um, it was the mid 90s. Now it's like 2008 and 2009 ish. Thinking about the teacher, and I had started up my own painting company. I was gonna that's what I was doing after getting sober. Like I got laid off from the corporate world. I was like, okay, I'm gonna start my own painting company because I used to paint way back when in the early 90s, and I enjoyed that to a certain extent. I'll try doing it again. So I'm at this Starbucks in North Vancouver. Like this was a day or two later. I was sort of not obsessing, but I was definitely like had my mind on this course and the teacher. And I was listening to podcasts at the time, like rough podcasts. This is like blog talk radio. This was back when like there was podcasts, super shitty quality. Like it wasn't really. But there was lots of information back then, even, right? Lots of information back then. I mean, even back then in 2007, 2008, you could listen to whatever you wanted for free and learn about anything. Anyways, I go into the Starbucks, and who do I bump into? The teacher is in the Starbucks. And I go and I look at him, I go, see, now I can't even remember his name. I wish I could remember his name now. Maybe it'll come to me. And I probably freaked him out because I'm like, you're so and so. Do you remember me? Like, I was one of your students. I took your UFO course, and I was just thinking about you the other day. Like I started throwing all this synchronicity at me. He was kind of like backing away from me, like, who is this guy? And I said, are you still involved in UFOs and all that? Like I was trying to like have a deeper conversation with him, but he was kind of like, I think I threw him off. And he said, no, he said, I just listened to Ben Grundy now. I'm like, what? So I searched Ben Grundy, and he's the host of Mysterious Universe, who then later on I listened to his show Mysterious Universe, and somehow that connected me with Mysterious Universe, and then I would like leave them voicemails and write in. And then when I moved to Calgary, like that has a genesis story of how I started my podcast. I mean, I gave that podcast to Darren for Darren to listen to, and he got right into that because it was super good quality. It was like the best kind of like podcast out there about all that stuff. So I'm like, all right, you're not into this. You're not teaching about UFOs anymore, but you just throw out this name, Ben Grundy, to me. So yeah, that's kind of, and I was talking about synchronicities because even in recovery, I remember writing my journal and writing notes in my book about synchronicities. I had a synchronicity in recovery about Qigong. I was learning how to do, they have a Qigong class in the morning. And I took a while before I was reading this book called Eckhart Tolle, The New Earth. Right. And I was like in recovery and I was reading it to the group and I was picking out phrases to read to them and stuff. I was just total geek in there. But I finally decided to go to Qigong because I was super tired when I got there. And I was like, okay, I'll go to Qigong. So I went to Qigong. I had this amazing class, and the first Qigong class was just incredible. That night in the recovery group, I opened up the book, A New Earth, and I looked down, and the first word I spotted was Qigong. I'm like, how the fuck can I? So synchronicities were already happening, and I was already kind of making notes of them in 2008 or whatever. And then, then it built up to like the one with the UFO teacher. It's kind of good to talk about it again. It's been a while since I've like laid it out in a story, and it sounds better than I remember it being.
Yeah. Are you still seeing synchronicities now? Or is that something you still look to identify?
Yeah, they happen. I do, but they don't happen quite as much, I don't think. Sometimes I go through these phases, and who knows if it's even like the planetary alignments or some sort of solar thing. But I go through phases where I have a whole bunch of mini ones at once. Like I'll see the word from a song when I hear the word come out, or like there's like just little mini ones that happen and like stretch, and then I go through a gap where it doesn't really happen again. But I guess those big types of synchronicities haven't happened in a while.
I guess you could look at it from a bit of an experience point of view. So you could train yourself to identify them more often, because I'm guessing they happen more often than you think, but you can be a bit inexperienced to identify them, right?
Yeah, and if you're not present, right? I mean, I was really working on being present and mindful. Like I was doing long mindfulness meditations for a while there. I was really sort of learning how to separate myself from my thoughts, and I think that was a key. That was a key as well. Is if I'm just in my head and distracted by all my negative thought patterns and all this stuff, what I'm not going to notice a synchronicity, right? So there's a certain, I think, amount of awareness or being in the moment that needs to happen in order to even see the stuff.
Yeah, because I guess like even if you're just journaling, for example, you're reflecting on your life, and you're not just living, you're thinking about your life more, and you are sort of analyzing your life a little bit more. So you're putting more into your mind for the synchronicities to sort of line up. Whereas some people literally just go to work, do their job, come home, go to sleep. They don't really even think about what happened the day before, because it's the same thing they do every day, I guess.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I can't even remember what that was in answer to, but it was somewhere along the line about UFOs, or how I got into the UFO thing. Yeah. So yeah, that kind of just projected me into all this stuff, right? Ancient mysteries and UFOs, and yeah.
What did they teach you on a UFO course?
How to I think they taught how everybody sees different things and stuff. And he talked about the history of UFOs going back to like, I guess, Roswell and stuff like that, and Project Blue Book. I think he did like sort of a historical thing, and then he would do exercises in the class, like, okay, this is what happens, and you all describe it. So everybody would describe it, and you would see how people describe things differently, right? You all saw the same thing, but everybody has a different way of describing it. So I think he would go around. it's so weird thinking back to that now. I have the book. I have the book somewhere in storage. I should almost pull it out. But yeah, it's interesting that yeah, he would show how investigations sort of would work and how it's hard to investigate based on just what like people's testimony and stuff like that.
Hmm. It's weird to think that they even did that course. Do they still
I
do
know.
that course now?
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, I don't think so. It must have been a weird time where I got yeah. It almost feels surreal right now. You
What is
know?
that? Would you say that's like before universities started being propaganda machines?
No, I think this was a college. It was a community college, so I don't think it was part. It wasn't part of like a university system. It was like it was more of a college that was allowed to do their own thing like that. You know, I think it was just a matter of that.
It's
It
more of like a
wasn't.
hobby course rather than an actual academic.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you do that course before you saw the UFO or after?
No, it was after. It was probably
Okay.
about 4 or 5 years after.
Do you know? I mean, coming a bit more to your current life, you do a lot of traveling to these sacred locations. I think you mentioned on the last podcast.
Yeah, not too much, but a little bit. I mean, we went to Egypt with Ben Van Kirkwith and the Brothers of the Serpent. Did that one, but I haven't been to all around to like South Africa or South America or anywhere else. I've done a lot of traveling, but I've done a lot of traveling even to the UK in the past, but not necessarily from a sacred site perspective.
So it was just Egypt where you went to the ancient sites, right? Yeah, because I remember last time you was it. I don't know if it was you or Darren that said it seemed like the pyramids was to funnel water through, which I thought was a. I've heard. Well, I looked up. I was looking into it after we had the conversation. I've seen more and more people talking about the theory of it was either water or wind. It was to allow wind to come through, like it's set up for wind to come through, and it was a like a sort of propeller for energy, which I think is a really good theory. But I wanted, do you know much information about Aaron? What's the mountain called where they can't get to the top?
Mount Kailash in Tibet.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. You broke up for a sec when you asked that. What about the mountain?
So there's a mountain in Tibet called Mount Kailash. Cam just wants to know if you know anything about it.
No, no, I don't think so.
Have you heard about it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so it's this sacred mountain in Tibet where they say the energy on that mountain is too powerful and you can't unable to climb it. But some people have climbed it, but have meditated their ways to the top.
They had to meditate their way to the top.
Yeah, so they'll like stop at each level and meditate, and then move up to the next level and meditate, and then move up.
No, that sounds fascinating. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
Mount Kailash, it's called.
I could believe it.
Yeah, because people have said they've attempted to climb it, but then apart from obviously the physical structure of the mountain, they were saying that they've because I mean today like, people can climb stuff that is with some of the like, tools that we've got for doing, I guess, crazy stuff. We should be able to get up it, but people are saying that even with all these tools, it feels as if there's an energetic, like there's an energy around it, a force field around it, which is stopping people from managing to get up. And then the people that have managed to meditate their way up is sort of breaking that energy barrier, and then that part of the earth then is allowing them to enter it in a sense.
Yeah, I think in Hinduism they believe that Shiva resides there.
Mm.
Is that the god of destruction?
Yeah.
Shiva?
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. I wonder what that is. If there's some artifact in there, or if it's just yeah.
But no, it's currently in Chinese because Tibet's part of China, so it's Chinese territory. They don't let anybody even attempt climbing it or doing any excavation or exploring it at all. But
Yeah, really.
if you look at the mountain, it looks like a structure that's been built. Do you want to pull up a pit cam?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's fascinating.
It looks yeah built literally.
Wow, that's it. That's interesting. I mean, it looks like it'd be hard to climb, anyways.
Yeah, it looks like you'll just slip straight down. I guess this is the one with Shiva now.
That Shiva there.
I think Tibet's fascinating too. I mean, that was also like what the Theosophy had a lot to focus on in Tibet as well. It's yeah,
It's a
really
place I'm
fascinating.
really eager to go. I was looking at some hiking tracks there that take you around Kailash and through Tibet, through some of the villages. Um, it's something I think I'm going to do in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's great. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Do you know much about Atlantis or have any theories on Atlantis?
Not I have some theories, I guess, or sort of like the ones that resonate with me, but yeah, I'm not too sure if I have any specific theories. I mean, Randall thinks it's in the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which is super interesting, and then we've had guests on that say it's in Egypt, and
Right,
which
I've
I would,
heard the theory that it's in. Oh well, I've heard the theory that it's in Egypt. It's under the water. It's
yeah,
in Antarctica.
but
I heard a theory that it's in the Sahara Desert as well.
yeah, yeah. I think what I would say is it sounds to me like it was a civilization, not a location. So it was more like, hey, this was Atlantis was sort of pre-catastrophe, so it was the last remaining like bit of the ancient advanced human technology and culture before the Younger Dryas impact. I mean, if I was to stick with kind of like what's the sort of the leave the most mainstream in there as well, and add sort of the esoteric part of Atlantis, I would think that it was. I think that's probably where I would resonate. It was like all over the world, maybe in Egypt and in North Atlantic or in the Mid Atlantic as well, and maybe even in Sahara or wherever. It was an advanced culture all around the world. Um, Probably after Lemuria, then Hyperborea, like that could be even older than that, 50,000, 60,000 years, maybe hundreds of thousands. And then Atlantis was the latest after, sort of just before the cataclysm that now is looking like it really happened like 12,800 years ago, or the what Hancock and Carlson talk about, like, and then there was some wisdom teachers that made it through, and they brought the ancient wisdom to all these peoples in, you know, India, Egypt.
Yeah, that they've spread out sort of around the globe in different areas.
You know
Yeah,
much about Plato's writing on it? Because he's
not
mentioned.
really. I mean, I've read it and stuff, narrated a bunch of it. It kind of fits. I think it fits with that. It fits the timing, fits with it. Um, yeah, it's pretty fascinating because it's why isn't some of the tools and technology around, or has it just been hidden? Like, has it been hidden so well that we just haven't found it yet? Like, why isn't there more found?
Yeah, well, there's a theory, right, where the knowledge that they had in Atlantis when the sort of chaos erupted spread out around different parts of the globe, Egypt or India, and then I guess over. I mean, you've got like different civilizations which came in the future. They sort of suppressed that information and kept it within the civilization for the civilization to grow. And then, I mean, to bring it towards modern day, it said that the people of Atlantis, the ones that were left, went to obviously there were a lot of them were in India, and then when the Nazi Germany tried to sort of take over, they took a lot of that knowledge from India into Nazi Germany. But then obviously the US saw. So now you're talking about Atlantis people being Nazis, and then the US sort of saw them Nazis there and then took them to the US for the I guess the civilization that we see today.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that. I think that's interesting. But I also been thinking about the secret societies from thousands of years ago. Maybe I've even sort of started to think recently that they might even be responsible for a lot of the UFO phenomena. Like we know there's a breakaway. So I'm pretty sure there's a breakaway civilization now flying around. It's not just all ETs and interdimensional stuff. There's a bunch of crafts being flown around by humans. Now, I'm starting to think, why aren't those just the ancient society, the ancient secret societies that have sort of kept stuff hidden from the rest of us, maybe for thousands of years, technologies and wisdom, whatever, and spiritual realities as well. And they've sort of evolved or migrated into the modern. It might not even be modern until we began making better metals and stuff like that. Like, who knows if they used to be responsible for certain phenomena in the 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and then whenever we grow technologically, they sort of harvest a lot of that technology and keep it to themselves anyways. It just might have a lineage that goes back way further than we thought. It's not just an organization that popped up in the late 1800s with the airships. It's been around, and it's just because it's been around for so long, you're able to keep absconding this technology to use for your secret society. I mean, I also think there's the ancient wisdom, these masters that like the Theosophists talk about, and especially from India, the Mahatmas, they can visit us through the invisible realm, right? They can interact with us through the invisible realm. I mean, I really start to think, like, if all that's real, which I believe it is, then why isn't there still this group of Mahatmas that can present themselves as all kinds of phenomena? How do we even know what's real, right? If humans have the power, and I believe they do, and the capability to do these things, who knows what's ET or interdimensional or inner Earth, or when it could be just a bunch of Mahatmas in a cave in Tibet, in the middle of that mountain in Tibet.
Shit, yeah, that's so true. It could be a possibility that, I mean, it's hard to put all the pieces of the puzzle together from what we're told and what we're trying to work out. But you've got like Elon Musk, for example, who's putting all of his cards down into getting to Mars, right? You've got Jeff Bezos that wants to get to Mars. Like, they obviously know something, and they can use the excuse that the Earth might not be livable in however many years because of climate change. But do with that as you please. But it could. I mean, so many people have said that Elon Musk gives off alien vibes. So it could be that they are in communication with these people and they are getting the blueprints from these people. But there's obviously not enough space on the ship, or not enough space for the whole of everyone on the globe. And I
I don't
mean,
know if Elon's a part of that, though. I don't know if Elon is like, he might not be read in on all that, because when he was on Rogan and he's talking about rockets, and I'm like, Elon, don't you even, you must. And I think UFOs got brought up and he just kind of sloughed it off. And I'm like, Elon, are you really that naive that you don't even understand the modern UFO phenomenon? Like, come on, dude. Like, there's so much fucking evidence now. So he's either doing a really good job at lying about all this just not being real, but he comes across pretty genuine. I feel like he was genuine about it. He just doesn't believe or know that there's this technology. Like, what if they just let him and Bezos do their thing in the open, and we all think, oh yeah, well, we're trying to get to Mars. Meanwhile, they're fucking flying around in their black triangles to the moon and back, or wherever they want in the universe. Somebody's flying around things that are defying the laws of physics and gravity, and it's not just ETs, it's humans. They can go wherever they want. So Elon just doesn't seem like he's allowed to to participate in that, unless he's doing a really good job at acting and lying.
it's hard for someone like him to do a good job of lying when he's so. I mean,
Exactly.
he's active all day online.
Yeah, but he also says real stupid stuff. So you're like, well, he's not, he seems legit because he's such a good troll too, right? So you know what I mean? I get the sense that he's almost what's the word I'm looking for? He's almost like they're using him in a way.
Yeah,
I don't know.
He's a distraction.
Yeah, yeah, a controlled distraction.
Do you ever think about the theory that these UFOs, or we call them UAPs these days, I think, are time travelers?
Yeah, yeah, I thought about that a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time with the time travel thing, but I mean, even some of the we had an interview with a guy who wrote the book on T. Townsend Brown, and it does sort of put time travel into a bit of an easier perspective to understand. If you're pulling, he describes it as like it's not sort of anti-gravity, it's it's not reverse gravity. It's like you're reaching through to somewhere in space time and pulling it towards you. Like it's like there's a rope attached through the middle of it. So there's like these polarization points, and there's a rope attached through the middle. And it's not like you're pulling all this slack. It's like when you pull the rope, the top comes down as well. So you're pulling that space time towards you. So in that regard, time does seem malleable or different, right? If you're able to sort of not travel through past the speed of light, but pull space and time towards you. It's pretty fascinating. And this is back in the 1930s, right? He was looking at all this stuff. Like, where did Brown's technology go? You know?
Yeah, it's all just been written off, and we've just
And
gone down a path of.
yeah, yeah. And he was part of. He was on the. He was on NICAP with the author I talked about with what's his name? The Saucer's Real, Donald Kehoe, and CIA guys on that. So like, what were they doing there? Like, Brown's totally interested in anti-gravity. He's made all these inventions, and then they're on this. He was the board. He was the chairman of the board, I think, of NICAP in '53, and they're watching all these civilian organizations study UFOs, and they're tracking the UFOs, and yeah, I don't know. It's very, very strange.
Yeah, it's with the CIA, they I forgot what it was. Who do you know who it was that created the CIA?
Well, in '47, after Roswell, or a couple months after Roswell, it was created, and wasn't it Dulles? Either Alan Dulles or maybe his brother, or I think it was from the OSI. Check. Yeah, I think it was. I think it might have been Dulles.
Yeah, so it was created as a it's an intelligence agency, but there was something that I was listening to the other day where it was what it was actually created for, and it was to obviously harness the information that. Are you still there?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
information
That's
that's out there and what we're listening to and what we're believing.
that's exactly that's what I'm trying. That's what I'm sort of coming to realize is that they were not just created out of nothing. I think they were the OSI, weren't they before? Uh,
Uh, Something along the lines. Yeah, I'm quite new
or
to
the
looking into it.
OSS or OSI, and they became the CIA. And that's what I'm starting to think. And it has to do with the occult reality that they figured out back in the early 1930s, 40s. They're like, there's like a greater reality. We need to fucking protect ourselves from the people that will learn about this reality.
Exactly. This is it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you know much about Project MK Ultra?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, that's part of that whole thing. They're realizing all that. I mean, there's the even in the 30s, the Nazis were giving people psilocybin, and then they brought a lot of that Nazi experimentation with different types of hallucinogens into research with MK Ultra, different programs with that, and that's all part of it as well. Learning about how we're going to react to certain information in certain situations.
Yeah, they'll never legalize them drugs because of what it will open the mind to. I think.
Well, they might do it under restriction from having to do it with official government people. That's what I'm worried about. They're gonna take it away from you organically using it with sort of shaman types, and they're gonna make it very clinical. Yeah, you can use it, but you got to come to the clinic and sit on a couch with somebody.
Yeah, and that's scary as shit, right? Because you don't know how they're going to manipulate you. Because they'll use it as a tool to manipulate your mind rather than to. They'll very
Yeah, 'cause
much.
I was listening to Graham Hancock talk about ayahuasca, and he said once you take it, it lets down all the guards in your mind, so people can easily penetrate like your energies and your mind and start manipulating you through your spirit, like spiritually manipulating you.
Wow, that's interesting.
So if they do start bringing it into like clinical environments, you're opening yourself up to pure manipulation by someone who you can't necessarily trust. Because he was saying he went to an ayahuasca retreat with his wife, and there was a powerful shaman there who was sucking the energies out of people in the retreat, and everybody was complaining about this person because once he took the ayahuasca, they felt like their energy was being sucked away. And the guy looking after everybody in the retreat, that everyone was complaining to him, and he ended up sending this shaman home. And the shaman admitted that when he was leaving, he said, "I go around to different ayahuasca places and I steal people's energies. That's what I do."
Fuck, imagine that, eh? And what does he see? Is that evil? I mean, that's got to be evil, right? I mean,
Well, yeah, you're interfering with someone. Well, you're stealing someone's energy.
yeah,
Something like that's a bit different than like stealing a watch off someone on their phone.
Yeah, it does. It does sound like they're gonna make psychedelics clinical just from the articles and the research they're doing already. They're saying it's to help mental health. Doctors can prescribe it, or doctors may be able to prescribe it in the future. So it's going to go down that path and further away from where it should be.
yeah, yeah. In a community with a shaman, helping you in the invisible realm, taking care of you, holding space for you, all that stuff. Yeah.
You have much experience with psychedelics.
No, I haven't done them in geez, I don't know how long, maybe 20 years, 15, 20 years, but I've done, LSD and mushrooms and ecstasy and I guess MDMA and yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I haven't done ayahuasca, haven't done straight up DMT or any of those other sort of more rare and extreme ones, just the basics. And I wasn't doing it with a lot of reverence. I was just partying way too much, and you know what I mean? It was a waste. I wasn't using it properly.
There's something I've been thinking about this year. So me and Cam, we gave up drinking at the start of the year.
Oh, good. Congratulations.
Okay. And I've just been thinking about like we gave up drinking and recreational drugs and everything. So I've just been like completely sober this year, not been out of my consciousness once.
Good for you. Wow.
But I was thinking next year I might start experimenting with drugs to sort of enhance my mind rather than just for partying and having a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you, if I wasn't 15 and a half years sober, I would do that probably. I've just built up sort of a pretty comfortable path without that. But if I was early in sobriety again, I would probably use psychedelics this time, for that type of purpose. And I would have way more reverence and really take care of the set and setting and do it with people properly. And yeah, not just in a party and atmosphere. I would probably do that. But now I don't want to even mess with it right now because it's been so long and
15 and a half years is a long time.
Knowing me, I'd be like, okay, when are we doing mushrooms again? I'd be like, I wouldn't be able to wait till I'm doing it again. Fucking, when are we doing mushrooms? I mean, I got such addictive personality and just like every Friday I want to do mushrooms, and then I'd be looking for it too much, right? I mean, yeah, I've done a lot of work and it's working, so I don't want to take myself off. But I've thought about that even like 5 years ago. I was like, if I was early on, I'd probably do ayahuasca or mushrooms or something. Yeah.
or even weed as well, right? I mean, a lot of people smoke it recreationally, but you can smoke it to like sort of listen to yourself a bit more and connect yourself to it. But it's not got really that. It's not really got that. Like that. That's not seen. Like, that's not attached to it. It's more because so many people do it recreationally. It's not seen as something that can actually help.
Yeah, we did a great show with somebody a few years back now, and it was about the spiritual use of cannabis. Really taking it. You can't use it every day, all day, kind of stuff. Like you're better off using it, whatever, once a week in ceremony or in some sort of like with reverence, and same thing, and you get a lot more out of it using it that and not abusing.
I was listening to someone talking about weed, and they were saying it's been so manipulated and um, manufactured. I think manufactured. I can't
And
remember
engineered
exactly.
or engineered or
Engineered. That's the
modified.
word. Modified. Yeah. So it's got so much THC on it now. It's out of balance to what it's supposed to do.
That's interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. In some way. If you were just smoking it naturally, you get something, but now it's like a hard drug now. It's become almost a hard drug. I can't even imagine. I used to have to be careful. Like I used to have to keep it to like 2 hoots if otherwise, especially if I was drinking, otherwise I'd just be way too fucked up. And that was back then, like 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. I can't imagine now. That'd be a write-off. I wouldn't be able to handle it at all.
Well, has it been modified like through the illegal market by people just trying to make the best, strongest stuff, or has it been modified in the legal market as well?
Well, both. I think the legal market's made it worse in California.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. Because now they're putting the percentages on there and all that. I mean, geez, we used to take whatever we could get. Now they're like, it's all tailored to different percentages and
Oh, it's
sativa.
still
And
illegal in UK, but we went to Amsterdam last year, I think it was, or the year before maybe, and and yeah, because it's legal over there, I felt like it wasn't as strong as the illegal stuff is over here.
oh wow, that's interesting. Huh. I don't know. So is it going to get legal there sooner?
I don't
I
think
think
so.
Rishi Sunak's got bigger fish to fry.
How's it going over there? You guys like it over there?
Uh, Less and less as time
Yeah,
progresses.
really? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
try to stay positive, but it's a bit difficult when
they're trying to push the 15-minute cities a lot,
yeah.
and obviously when the central digital currencies come in, that's when
Yeah.
stuff might get.
I guess it's similar in Canada, right?
Yeah, it's well, yeah, similar, but it's different because we're so spread out and we don't have the same facility to activism and stuff. Like, you guys in our big cities we do, but we're so spread out, right? So I feel like you guys can organize and get together a little bit easier than we can, but I found my UK citizenship the other day. So I have my UK citizenship, but I don't have a passport. But I don't know like what that would, if I would be able to like come over there and work or something, or if that would I don't know how I would go from that to a passport, but I should probably look into that just to have should just do that to have another passport. My
Yeah,
mom
they
was
do say you should have more than one passport.
Yeah, exactly. I got to fucking renew my Canadian one too before they throw more mandates or something at us. No, but it's hard. It's getting hard to afford to live. Like, I mean, it's the inflation is not what they say it is. It's so fucking everything is so fucking expensive now. It's really tough. Like, it's really, yeah,
I'd say my
really,
weekly shopping this past year and a half has doubled.
yeah, exactly. Doubled, not just 5% or 10% like they say, like literally doubled. Yeah,
Mm. But it's
yeah,
on the verge of literally, if inflation keeps going, it's going to be unlivable for. Well, it's already
yeah,
unlivable now for so many people.
yeah, yeah. And it's hard because we're stuck with these creature comforts now. Like, what do you do? Get rid of the internet connection? I mean, that's a lot of the way a lot of people work or a lot of people communicate. So you need a certain amount of stuff now just to live a productive life. But what do you start cutting back on? Yeah.
Mm. What do you think about like a break off society?
Yeah. I mean, that would be parallel. I mean, I think that's the only way out in a lot of ways. There's a parallel system, parallel society, you know? I really feel like we're being split. I really feel like we're being split between, and this is probably an old battle. That's the other thing I've started to realize. Like this battle for freedom has been ancient, you know? That might even be always there. It might even be part of our human nature is a battle for freedom. People that want to control and people that want to be left alone, you know? But how do the people that want to be left alone win that battle when you want to leave others alone, right? There's a weird dichotomy there. Like, I don't want to control you, so I don't want to go on the offensive and even control you for my own freedom because that's not right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
that's fighting fire with fire, right? It goes against
Yeah,
what you want by trying to control
yeah.
someone.
So then like us as just as in people. Let's just say people that want sort of some freedom. You know, they don't want to be like. How do we ever gain it? Because we don't want to be bothering other people. Like we don't want to be telling them what to do. So even just leave us alone, right? Is like, so I think that the world's kind of splitting right now. They're not letting us see it, but there's a lot of people that just want freedom and to be left alone. And there's other people that want to control it for the greater good and all that. And like, when is that real split going to happen? Like something is going to happen. It's going to boil over at some point, right? I mean, they're still pushing from the UN, the WEF, at all these levels, they're still pushing for that.
How close do you think we are to that day?
I don't know. I think, sometimes I think it's like a year or two, and then sometimes I think this is where when we look back, this will be a long stretch from, you know, like let's say COVID 20 or 30 years, and it'll be this thing. It'll be called something, you know. It'll be even more than World War III. You know, it'll be like the division, or almost like a BC, like a before Christ. You know, it'll be that like it'll be a map where this happened. Like 2020 was this point in time, and everything changed after that, and it'll be like a 20, 30, 40, 50. I mean, if you look at some of these wars in Europe, like what was the 100-year war even was that between France and England, or like there was, you know, but they weren't calling it that at the time. They were just in it, right? I think we're going to look back and realize like this was a huge, like the internet started up, all this stuff happened, and there was this huge shift in humanity. So I think it's going to be longer than we think, unless they do something to provoke everybody way more than they are right now. So this is like a long, slow kind of like a wake up call for a lot of people. And maybe this new conflict in the Middle East will help push people one way or another. But that seems to be splitting everybody in a, you know, we we're kind of going like this. Now it's like they just threw a big wedge across the other way, you know, horizontally across everybody. So now they're split into 4 or 5 different groups instead of 2. I mean, it really was perfect timing.
Yeah. Because you're noticing people who, before, say, there was the left and the right, you're noticing people on the right and the left. Some of them are agreeing with each other.
That's what I mean. Exactly.
Yeah.
It created a whole shift now. Yeah. And even the like sort of the wokesters that were going, you know, for COVID mandates and trans ideologies and all that, they're all of a sudden now going to see that the mainstream media is not with them on this one. Like, why is the system that was supporting us before not supporting us on this thing? Like, there's going to be some very weird shifts now, especially if it accelerates like it seems to be, where other countries are getting involved. And yeah, what do you guys think about that?
No, it's pretty crazy what happened. When did it happen? Saturday morning?
Saturday
Sunday
morning, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
It
still pretty
seems to be
fresh.
escalating fast. And what are they saying? Russia, China, and Saudi are back in Palestine?
Oh wow, I didn't know that, but yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like that kind of makes sense. Yeah, that seems to be how it would land, right?
Yeah. It does seem like the world is being split from what these BRICS nations and the nations controlled by the WEF, like that, like
Yeah,
the Western nations.
exactly. The multipolar from the versus the unipolar kind of. Yeah.
Mm. So you can see that splitting
Yeah.
more and more.
Yeah. And I don't know if that equals the split I was talking about. Like, of course, the optimistic point would be, oh, the BRICS want freedom. But, you know, are they just as bad? Is their tyranny going to be just as bad as the unipolar WEF world? You know, I mean, we don't really know, but right now it's kind of like the enemy of your enemy seems to be your friend, but is it? You know, it's
Well, that's like the biggest problem with it, right? Because you start trusting those, you naturally will look to trust that, and
yeah,
that can be chaos.
exactly.
But like, what? We're not really given much choice. We don't really have any options here. We've
Yeah,
got limited
exactly.
options.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, what you're saying about a division within a division within a division, yeah, I feel like over the next 5 years, I mean, there's all this stuff going on about 2030, right? Seems to be a big year for a lot of stuff. And it seems like between now and then, what, 7 years, we're just going to get more and more and more and more divides, and then we're going to see what the grand finale is. But even with the breakaway civilization, right? I love the idea of it, but in reality, it might be good for a few years until it gets infiltrated by people who look at it and think, oh, there's a breakaway society, and then they come over because they think it's sexy, it's new, it's a novelty, and then sooner or later it's just going to be ridden again, probably a lot faster than it gets created.
I know it's so weird. It's almost like it almost comes back down again, and I hate to even say this, but it almost comes back down to just being a spiritual thing. Like you almost have to be okay to accept whatever's happening in a way, because it's almost like an eternal battle in a way. Like you say, if you ever whatever we kind of do, there's never any guarantees in life. There's never any guarantees that you won't end up dead on the road tomorrow from a car or whatever it is. So like let's be okay with what's going on right now. Like it almost comes back to that spiritual kind of wisdom, that sort of practice of just sort of enjoying the journey and not having to try and get to somewhere that you think is going to make you happy.
Because that could not exist.
Yeah, exactly. When you get there, you'll be like, what? This isn't what I expected.
Yeah, but you know the journey exists, so
Yeah.
love the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you take that sort of mindset towards it, anything that comes your way,
Yeah.
you're just going to be able to handle it
Yeah.
because you just like whatever. Like this is the journey. I'll deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of where I'm at lately. It's probably a good place to sort of finish it off, but that's kind of where I've come to lately. Like I even commented on a post the other day. It's like, well, my goal is to be okay wherever I am. Whatever resources you have or whatever, just try and be okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Expectations only lead to disappointments.
Yeah, there are resentments under construction.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Graham.
Cheers,
Graham. Amazing.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming down for part 2.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Good speaking to you.
Yeah, you too.
We'll catch you later then. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, guys. Bye.
See you later.